Welcome to Shop Talk Live, Fine Woodworking Magazine's bi-weekly podcast. I'm senior web producer Ed Pernick, and joining me today are executive art director
Mike.
I wanted to come up with something good for you, a good name, but it's just Mike Pakovich.
Mike.
And senior editor Dr. Matthias Frankenstein Kenny.
Good evening.
You're supposed to respond, do you also say Frodrick? For anybody who's ever seen Young Frankenstein. Listen, before we get started, make sure if you dig this podcast, you spread the word to your fellow woodworkers. Maybe stop by our iTunes page, leave a comment, maybe a sweet 5-star rating. You can also catch us at, Matt?
iHeartRadio?
Nice. You're learning.
Is that right?
That's right.
Awesome.
So big news in the Segway topic front.
Really?
We are on video.
What?
Which is making me increasingly nervous because we have like lights in here and 3 cameras and a bigger mixer, and it's kind of off-putting.
My apologies to everybody who's actually watching instead of listening.
Yes. Mike definitely has a face for podcasting.
Absolutely. So basically, if anybody who's listened to this podcast from its inception knows that when we started, this was a grand experiment, and we were doing a live stream.
Oh, God,
Yes.
the most uncomfortable hour of my life.
And it was terrible.
Yes.
It was, yes.
But we figured out the learning curve, and then we decided that because it was a live stream, who the heck is watching this? Because everybody's at work on a Friday afternoon or whatever. Everybody's at work. Nobody's, watching this.
Right.
So we decided to do this experiment again. We're sort of recording a video feed, and then we're going to put it up afterwards, and it'll be sort of archived on the site, and you can watch it afterwards if you want. This may or may not work. We're going to try this for a few episodes. If people like it, we'll see that in the metrics. If they don't like it, we'll see that in the metrics, and then we'll stop doing this.
Immediately.
But I would just like to say, for anybody who watches this entire thing on the video feed at some point,
Yes.
please contact me, and I'll put you in touch with the appropriate health professional because you have problems.
That's right. Now, I will remind you, gentlemen, that this is still primarily an audio-only podcast, so
Yes.
treat it as such.
All right.
With that,
Does that mean I can take my shirt off as usual?
absolutely. I mean, look, I'm wearing, as you remarked earlier, my this
Union
new
suit.
T-shirt that my wife bought me that looks like the top end of a union suit. Little do you know, I have the entire union suit under my jeans with the behind flap. This is a family-friendly show, so
The old outhouse flap.
yeah. Can I say butt flap?
Sure.
All right, butt flap. I mean, there's a butt joint. There could be a butt flap. Anyhow, listen, we've got to give a little love to our sponsor, and that is Minwax, as you all know now. For more than 100 years, Minwax has been the leading brand of high-quality wood finishing and wood care products. From wood stains to clear protective finishes, plus solutions for wood preparation, maintenance, cleaning, and repair, Minwax products are requested by the do-it-yourself consumer, seasoned woodworkers, and professional contractors. You can find Minwax online at minwax.com or on Facebook, Twitter, and Pinterest. So Minwax is giving us a little love, helping us keep this podcast machine going and keeping it free and out there for everyone. So thanks, Minwax. With that, I say we answer some questions,
right,
stir up
yeah.
some controversy.
Let's get to it.
So the first question this week comes from Alec, who wrote, I bought a few used hand planes and restored them. I've been able to get 2 working, but I'm having issues with the frog on my Stanley No. 5. I can't get the blade to seat fully on the frog. It contacts at the top and then doesn't meet in the middle. I called Lee Valley for help because I ordered a new PM V11 iron from them and asked if I should lap the frog or something. They sounded very concerned and said cleaning only. At this point, is the plane junk? If this is an issue that can't be fixed without machining, please save me from more refurbishing drudgery. So PM V11, for those of you who don't know, is this new sort of powdered metal concoction that they came up with. And I think it's sort of gained in popularity. I get that sense.
I don't have one in any of my planes, but I've heard good things about them.
Yeah. So what's the deal with a frog that is not dead flat or it meets the iron?
Well, the first thing that jumps out to me in this question is that he says it contacts at the top, but not in the middle. But he doesn't mention the most important place, which would be
At the bottom.
At the bottom.
Right.
So if it contacts at the bottom and at the top, what do you think, Mike?
Well, one
Don't
thing.
bother asking me. I mean, I'm just...
If you're retrofitting
Why would we ever ask you?
a plane with a aftermarket iron, sometimes that iron is thicker.
Yes.
And if you have to adjust the frog back in order for it to fit through the mouth,
Mike.
It could be contacting. The frog could be so far back. The bottom of the plane iron is actually contacting the plane body head of the frog.
The mouth.
So if that's the case, pull out a file, take the frog off, take the blade out, and file the front of the mouth open a little bit so that you can slide the blade all the way in with that frog not so far back that it's contacting. Other than that, old style Stanleys, especially with the thin blades and those spring style chip breakers, when you tighten down the chip breaker, it actually flexes that blade out of flat. So it doesn't sit flat on the frog anyway. That's what your lever cap is for. Your lever cap is designed to put pressure right at the very tip of the blade, so it's bedded really solidly where, Matt, what you were saying, where it really counts at the bottom. The rest is just sort of up in the air a little bit. So I would say try it. Unless the frog looks like it's way kicked back and you have to file the mouth, stick it in and give it a try.
So, it sounds like he's sort of diving in head first without backing up and first seeing how it performs.
Yeah, and one thing that Mike hit on that's correct is that most of the replacement blades for old Stanleys, like if you get an A2, actually I don't know if Lee-Nielsen still sells them. They used to sell replacement blades.
I bought some from them in the past.
Yes.
And even though they're thinner than the blades for their planes,
thicker than a traditional, than the one that came with the Stanley. So that could definitely be the problem there. But if you decided to got to the point where you had to flatten the frog, you can certainly do that. With a piece of granite and some sandpaper.
Yep.
And we showed how to do it in Raleigh Johnson's article, or excuse me, Roland Johnson's article.
Rolando Johnson.
Yes.
As my grandma would say.
And I don't remember what issue that was in, but it was a good number of years ago now, like 2 years, maybe 3 years.
And his point was, it was more importantly was how the frog is bedded to the plane body itself.
Yes.
And you want to make sure that's bedded really soundly so there isn't any vibration at that point.
So there was Raleigh's article, and then there was also, I know that he did this, I'm pretty sure he did a series for this sort of sister site we have, Taunton Workshops, on rehabbing planes. So that might be, he might get some ideas from there too, possibly. You never know.
Then you could always this how I would solve the problem.
Buy a new plane.
Yeah, just buy a new plane and make sure it was made by Veritas or Lee-Nielsen.
I've mentioned my junk shop that I have in the town where I live a few times before, and I keep going there, and because he's always getting planes in, and he'll shoot me an email like, hey, I got some new stuff, and I always go, and he's always got them in this one glass cabinet. And what's killing me, it's like I'll look at these planes at first, like, oh, nice, I need a jack. And inevitably, every single one, it's like the casting is cracked. It's been Frankenstein with different frogs or different lever caps. Or it's just a diabolical concoction. And I can't find a good used plane. It's driving me nuts.
I always say every tool costs you time, money, and frustration. And you have to figure out which one you want to spend the most of.
Actually, you missed it, Matt. You obviously don't listen to the podcast that you don't partake in.
What podcast? This podcast?
I think the last time around when you were on the road, actually my favorite tool of all time of that week was my Stanley Bedrock 605.
It's certainly possible to get an old Stanley in great working shape. I just refuse to do it.
Yeah. All right. So let's.
That's all I'm saying.
So let's head into the next question. This is another one from Alec. Alec, you'll soon be receiving a charge on your credit card, which we have because we happen to know that you're a subscriber to Fine Woodworking Magazine. For this second question. So the second question is, I bought the plans for Chris Bexford's shaker stool from the website, which has been a fun project. I've been doing the project in walnut instead of pine, and after chopping the through mortises on the seat top, the stool top has a fair amount of small dents and dings. Is this typical? I'm trying to figure out what the issue would be. It might be some of the chips from the mortise getting trapped under the wood when I clamp it down. The chips get pressed into the top. I know compression dents are harder to get out than scratches when chopping a piece with a number of through mortises. Should I leave the top 1/16 of an inch or an 1/8 inch over thick? My guess is Matt's advice would be don't put dents in the wood. Please thank him in advance.
Matt,
You're really developing a reputation, Matt.
You want to take this, Matt?
Well, I mean, the answer is,
Is?
don't put dents in the wood.
Ta-da!
But I mean, so but he is right that probably what's happening is that chips and stuff from him making these mortises is getting underneath the seat,
Yeah.
and that's where the dents are, especially in walnut, which is a soft hardwood.
Yes.
Road rash.
Yes.
Butternut's even softer and even a bigger problem.
Yep, and pine would be even worse.
Yep.
White pine at least. So I would say the first thing you want to do is make sure you clean off your bench and then keep it clean. And then secondly, you could put some kind of thin cushion of sorts underneath it, and it wouldn't affect your mortising too much. It sounds like he's mortising by hand. So
Yeah, it might if it's bouncy.
yeah, so I would try. Here's some things you could try: a thin, one of those router pads that are really just rubber shelf liners.
Right.
You could try an old T-shirt.
Yes.
How about just some really clean MDF?
You could also go with some really clean
Yeah.
MDF and clamp that down to your bench, and then put your thing on top of that.
If your bench is all kind of scarred up and,
Yeah.
and whatever, yeah, a piece of MDF is
Yeah, because
nice.
if your bench has dried glue on it or nicks and cuts, that could
Yeah.
also be transferring.
Yeah, so scrape down the bench top if it's still a problem, piece of MDF. Other than that, just, Matt said, keep those chips clean. And here's the good news. Those little denty guys, they're not that tough to fix. If the fibers themselves on the edges of the dent aren't broken, you can steam those suckers out with, go grab your iron from the house. Hopefully you have an iron. Otherwise you have wrinkled clothes. Get some paper towels.
Thanks for that tip, Mike.
Wet that. Put that over the dent and just steam that with the iron. And those dents come up and they're like invisible. It's perfect. It's amazing. It'll raise the grain a little bit. You got to sand it
Moisten
down. But
moisten a little rag, put it on, and then set the iron over it.
yeah, just
Yes.
Yeah. All right.
You can also sometimes I'll just use really hot water.
and that'll do it
And
just
that'll
on its
do
own.
it, yeah.
All right, ladies. I say it's time for our first segment of the
Hey,
day. And
hey,
I'm sorry, miss.
Don't.
Sorry?
No.
Whatever. If you can give it, you can take it. Our first segment of the day is going to be all-time favorite tool of all time for this week, where we wax poetic about our most beloved, cherished tools.
Oh, but actually, let me go.
Yeah.
One more thing I had to say to the
Oh,
Alec.
God.
You could leave your seat a little bit thick, and that would help you not only with the dents, but also in case you had any tear out when you were making through mortises. You could then hand plane it away or clean it up.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what you just said. I wasn't really listening. I was thinking of my tool.
Yeah.
All right. Can I act? Can we? I'm sorry. Again, am I not here? Can we do the segment now?
Ed, how nice to see you. When did you show up?
So, who's going first?
I don't care. What did you got, Mike? Why don't you go first?
All right. This is the third.
If this is, I want to warn people. If this is a number 2 pencil, if this is a rag, if it's a sweeping brush thing, I'm just opening that door, and you can.
If it's your coffee press.
If it's your coffee press, whatever.
This is the third component of my Dovetail triple threat
Ooh.
method for cutting perfect dovetails. First of which we're well familiar with blue tape.
Oh my goodness, not the blue tape trick.
The second component, not exactly essential but convenient, the flip block.
Yes, the flip block.
Number
Mike
3,
Pekovich flip block.
possibly the most significant of the 3. I'm very excited to debut this on the show. Basically what it is, it consists of a strip of pine with a 1/4-inch groove ripped in it.
Now, Mike, does it have to be pine?
It could be any wood, soft or hard. It should be milled square.
So
And-
hold it up nicely for the video cameras, but also describe this in depth for
Yes,
us.
so what I'm holding up and what I'm looking at is I've got a overlength strip of pine, looks about 4 inches long, and then I have a 1/4-inch thick piece of MDF, which is glued into that slot. It's not quite as wide as the pine strip is long, so part
Comes
of the
up
pine
like a half-inch short.
sticks out a little bit. This thing is awesome for orienting your parts while scribing dovetails, which really is the most critical component of the entire dovetailing process. If your parts aren't aligned properly when you scribe it, you can nail your knife line, cut perfect joints, but your box is not going to end up square or flat. So what this does, one trick I learned a long time ago, Steve Latta, he runs a thin rabbet along the inside face of his dovetail components, and that rabbet registers the two parts together. This, in essence, creates a surrogate rabbet when you're not actually routing or sawing a rabbet on your boards. So what you do, I am demonstrating live on camera for the first time, is you position this cool little alignment jig so that on the bottom of the piece, you register the pine against the long side of the drawer part or part with your dovetails.
So the pine fence goes against the long edge of your tailboard.
Yes, and then I'll let Matt narrate, and then you slide it up until that MDF is exactly in line with your shoulder line.
Got
Okay,
it.
got that.
You get out a trusty spring clamp and just lightly hold it in place. Now, when I go to register my parts together, I can slide that little MDF lip, which becomes the rabbet, to the baseline, and then slide it over to the pine. And now it's registered in three aspects, both front to back, so that my dovetails end up with a nice tight fit, side to side, so they're not offset, and just as importantly, sort of rotationally, they're nice and square, so that once you're done dovetailing four corners of a drawer or a box, it sits flat on the table. Tremendous. I just taught a class on a little Tansu-style jewelry box where we had 10 dovetail drawers along with the dovetail case. I had 7 students, so basically knocking out 77 dovetail corners, and they nailed them. They're all perfect.
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 Yeah.
We're
So-
going to have to get a photograph of that up on the blog for this episode.
Yep.
Yes.
All right. Okay, that's... You have redeemed yourself.
And for those of you who are unsure of just how meaty Mike's hands are, that jig he was holding is actually a piece of 12-inch square MDF.
Yeah.
Oh,
I gotta watch
man.
my salt intake. My
He
hands
has-
are a little puffy these days.
He's only as tall as a normal man, but his hands are the hands of Andre the Giant.
All right. Dr. Frankenstein?
Yes, what do we have here? First of all, I'm going to pass this around because not only on a podcast can you not see this, but now you can't feel it either. But Mike and Ed can feel this. Feel that's in grain.
It's a triangular
Oh, God, it's like sandpaper.
block of maple.
Yeah, it's a piece of maple. It's an offcut from a bench plane
Let's see.
that I'm
Okay,
making.
so it's so smooth that... Let me see if I can do this for the microphone.
Okay, yeah, I
That's
can
my
hear that.
that's my thumb kind of moving across that smooth surface. and
Now
making
that
a
is that
squeaky
not
sound.
probably the
It's very smooth.
smoothest
Yes.
you've ever felt? And that's straight from the hand plane. Isn't Mike? That's I know that impresses you, Mike.
That is amazingly smooth and grain. I'm
Yes.
tremendously impressed by it. How did you even go about doing that?
It was all magic. No, it was just a standard block plane or a low angle block plane. So my favorite tool of all time this week is my low angle block plane. But of course the key is what, Mike?
Hold it up there.
Hold it up. There.
Sharpening.
Ooh.
Sharpening. That's right. So maybe my favorite tool should have been my set of sharpen Waterstones.
Did you do anything different? Was any strange blade angles or anything like that on there?
No, this time though, I do think I reground the bevel. So I have found personally for myself that I get better edges when I totally regrind the bevel. And you know why I think it is because a lot of times I used to skip when I went back to re-hone something,
Yes.
I would just go to 8,000 grit and
Yeah.
hone it, but you really can't do that. You got to go to 1,000.
I go to 1,000.
Yeah, and you just have to sacrifice more of the blade of the secondary bevel, making it wider
Yep.
to reestablish that edge down at the bottom.
I go with 1,000 until I feel that burr all the way across the back. It means I've really
Yeah.
gotten back to fresh steel.
But also, I think these are A2 steel blades, and it used to be the case with my Waterstones. The previous set that I owned, they did not handle A2 steel very well. They just did not polish it as well as they polished, say, 01 steel.
Right.
And this new set of Waterstones I have, which are ceramic, and they're from Sigma.
Okay.
They won the Waterstone review that Chris Gochner did
Oh,
a
yeah.
couple of years
Sigma
ago.
Chi Alpha.
Sigma Chi Alpha, yes. They come with a free paddle.
That's right.
Sigma, I think they're called Power Select 2.
What a great name.
Yes.
Sigma Power Select 2.
The only way to get them is to buy them from a guy that lives in Japan.
Of course.
And he gets them, and then you buy them from him, and he sends them over. But they're well worth it. And they're
What grits do you have?
a 1,000 or 1 or 12,000. I think it's a 12,000.
1,200.
1,200, yes. Yes.
Either 1,000 or 12,000. I don't know. Is there a difference?
A 6,000
Yes.
and a 13,000.
Okay, so you get
Whoa.
so it's that somewhat not necessarily coarse, but coarse, medium, fine.
Yeah,
You go all
absolutely.
three.
Yeah, it's normal. And but yeah, I've been refining my sharpening
Use
recently.
a honing guide.
Definitely use a honing guide. Absolutely. I don't sharpen enough to do it via muscle memory,
Right.
unless I hollow grind.
Well, that you mentioned getting the sharpest edge straight off of grinding. When I used to do everything by hand and you rely on that hollow grind,
Yeah.
I found by hand, I always got the sharpest edge right after hollow grinding. So, those edges, you're removing as little steel as possible because it's so, with every stroke you take, honing by hand, there's a risk of
Rocking it, yeah.
something rocking or screwing up.
I would like to point out that your all-time favorite tool of all time for this week should not be the plane or the sharpening technique. It should be this lovely, adorable little cloth that your block plane came wrapped in this
Yes.
pretty little. It's sort of
It's a sage green calico print.
yeah. It's got a
Yes.
nice.
Now, see, you
very
guys are
pretty.
mocking me, but this is where
Matt's music box music is coming.
once
on now.
again I have proved how much smarter that I am than you two.
Okay,
You want to know why?
sure.
Okay, because this piece of fabric is actually a leftover from the fabrics I use to line the insides of my boxes. Now, why would I use a fabric like this to line the inside of my boxes? Who is going to be buying boxes, do you think? I'm about to reveal how sexist I am. It is not
You are asserting that
a
ladies
big-
buy more boxes than men.
a big, middle-aged, fat woodworker like us. They're not buying boxes.
Mm-hmm.
No.
Mm-hmm.
Who's buying boxes? I want my boxes is going to be a lovely middle-aged woman.
Or college students hiding their stashes.
Yes.
Well,
But the fabric is appealing to many people, and that's why it's in there.
well, speaking of that, I gave your technique a plug when I was teaching this class because I mentioned I like to line it with sway, but I also mentioned that you had used silk, patterned silk in the past, and some of the students thought that was a really awesome idea.
I've used, in addition to using, these are actually quilting squares. I get to buy them as quilting squares at Joanne Fabrics.
Nice.
My second favorite store.
All
But
right.
yeah, also go and you can buy. I buy old shirts at the Salvation Army or wherever, and you can get all kinds of
Yeah, you've
awesome
been
Cool
coming
70s
in.
fabrics.
rayon.
Yeah.
You've been coming in with some strange butterfly collars lately.
super cool fabrics to match the different styles that you make. So
All
I can
right.
find fabrics that match my sort of Asian-inspired boxes, etc.
Yours, I would say, is a decent all-time favorite tool for this week. Mike, he's coming back.
Oh, this is
But let me show you, ladies, what a real all-time favorite tool of all time for this week looks like.
What you keep referring to us as ladies and miss?
That's right. Looks like this.
it's a big one.
Looks
Yeah.
like this. A big Veritas shoulder plane.
Oh, that's not a moose skull.
It does look kind of scully. So, the coolest thing about this, I think, is that it's mass. So this thing weighs close to 4 pounds, and
Big wide blade. Was that
it's
inch?
got
Inch plus?
an inch wide blade. And what's neat about these is that the lever caps. It's got two.
Not
One of-
lever caps,
Well,
little
what would you call
knobbies.
these? I mean, little knobs,
Yes.
Totes.
totes, whatever.
You don't even know the parts of the tools you own.
The front one is stationary, so what you might call the tote on a smoother, right? But the back one,
No, is what you would call the
you
knob
can
on a
the
smoother.
knob.
Oh, it's a tote the back.
Totes the
The
back.
totes
Okay,
the
so
back.
this has two knobs,
It's
You
got
guys
two
are
knobs.
knobs.
They are knobs.
or a front knob,
I'm a
and
little
then
sleepy today.
then
But
a
anyhow,
knob.
the back one adjusts, which is quite nice because you can make it fit into the hollow between your thumb and your index finger. And then you've got all these recesses on the body, and then you've got plenty big holes in the side of the body that you can kind of grip. There's a million ways to grip this thing, which I found quite comfortable. Where I'm falling flat on my face with this poor plane is that the increased humidity in the summer now is I'm getting some
Rust.
surface rust. I've got to take some 4.0 steel wool and put some wax or camellia oil on this thing. But I love this thing.
I didn't know you had that.
Yeah.
Just get a piece of burlap and soak it in whale oil, and be sure to wrap the plane
Whale
in
blubber.
that. Yes. Actually, this guy, I mean, the Veritas makes really good. I have the really big Lee Nielsen as well, and I like the big size. What I don't care for about the Veritas style is that little tote in the back. It puts my hand in the back, and I prefer to grab the plane
Well, you can take
right over
that
the blade.
tote out.
So I would say
That
if you're
knob.
goofing
I hold
around,
it two-handed.
yeah, try holding it one-handed and try gripping it right over the blade sometime.
I'll give it a shot.
Yeah, you might like that.
That's actually a picture of Andre the Giant holding a joiner plane.
That's number 7.5, in case you didn't notice.
I have the medium and small shoulder planes from Veritas,
Yeah.
and they are freaking awesome.
Yeah. What do you do with the little knobby on the back?
Well, I actually used to always have it, and I would, just like Ed said, adjust it to fit into the
Yeah.
crux
Crook of
there.
your hand. Yeah.
But when I made my new traveling tool case, which I pretty much use all the time now, I made it knowing that I'd have to take that knob off to
Yeah.
slide the shoulder plane in because I was trying to get it as compact as possible. So now it's just in a drawer in my toolbox.
You lost it.
No, I didn't. I still have it.
So you just end up, now you're just using the plane without the tote on there.
Yeah,
Okay.
without that little knob, adjustable knob.
All right.
All right.
The small one doesn't have any at all. That one is awesome. I love it.
Next question.
Next question.
Here we go.
All
It
right.
comes from Troy, who writes, here we go. A little pins versus tail action. You've done a great job of avoiding the pins versus tails. I'm sorry. Let me start that over. Having a hard time this morning. You've done a great job of avoiding the pins first versus tails first trap. I have a different pins versus tail question. Traditionally, we use half pins at the ends of the joint. This makes sense for a drawer front pin board, as the front may be slightly taller than the sides, but is there a structural benefit to use half pins rather than half tails? One of my early boxes was unintentionally made with half tails. I didn't notice the mistake until I was gluing up. It's been several years, and it does not seem to be a problem, and most other woodworkers, at least the ones I hang around with, don't even notice it. So here, he actually sent us a photograph, and I will do my best to put it up in the blog for this episode. But for those of you watching the video, this is what we're looking at. So,
Oh my god! Did anybody else notice
He
he
has
has
a
half
half tail.
tails? Oh my gosh!
right.
The
so
first
that
thing I
was-
noticed.
That was my reaction. It was like, you're really obsessing way too much over this. I mean, but there are benefits, right? I'll let you guys tackle that.
Well,
but
first of all, cut your tails first. There is no debate about pins
Yeah.
or tails. Tails first.
Tails first.
Anyone you speak to who's gone to North Bennett Street School,
We'll tell you pins first.
do not listen to them.
do not listen to Phil Lowe.
Well, I will. In
That's
defense,
the first time that's ever been said on this podcast. Matt, didn't I tell you don't play with the
Don't-
microphone?
don't touch the microphone.
Don't touch the mic.
Many like Dan Fea, for example, runs the program there, actually cuts tails first sometimes, pins first sometimes. He changed.
That sounds very Garrett.
Yeah. Anyways, let's get to this.
Garrett
guys.
likes to mix things up
So,
like that.
okay, so on the outside edge of the board, I prefer to have half pins on the outside because the only structural, glue surfaces in a dovetail joint are along the walls between the pins and the tails. End grain, nothing there. So wherever you have a joint between a pin and a tail, you've got a glue surface there. And having a half pin on the outside of the joint is going to place a glue surface as far as possible toward the edge of the board. So technically, it's going to prevent the boards from warping or cupping away from each other. So basically, spreading out the glue joint as far as possible is a good rule of thumb, which is why it's usually a good idea to have half pins on the edges, but I don't always have them. When I do a case with a rabbited back, I'll have a half tail on the back of the case, moving that pin forward enough to clear the rabbit, which is going around the corners. So,
I know it's interesting you speak about moving the joint out like that to get the advantage of the glue and so forth.
Yeah.
Because if I do not put half tails on the edge of the board like this guy did for his tote there, but I will say this: if you have a half tail on the outside, and that slope is coming, that the half the slope you get coming in, that's a mechanical advantage right there that would prevent the pin board from cupping up or cupping away from the joint, because you've got that, right?
Kind of. You still got it on the other side as well. But yeah, I mean, I think there might be a, I don't know. I'm not going to work hard to agree too much with that. But
Jeez.
here's the other thing where you may want to move
You can
that
take that
in.
photo if you want, Mike.
No, I guess that's not right. Never mind. I was going to say when you miter the corners of a dovetail joint. I was trying to think what you have, but I guess you have a.
Miter.
Well, yeah, but that portion, I guess you at that miter you sort of have a half pin and a half tail.
Yes.
So never mind.
It doesn't matter. If you like the way it looks, do it.
Yeah.
Just calm down, Troy.
Yeah, it's
Just
not going to fall
calm
apart.
down. Step away from the ledge.
I mean, I'm going to notice it every time.
On this tote, the little pins are only inset a half inch from the edge. So this is a really great structural joint. If those pins were inset, say the same distance as the distance between the other pins, which is maybe 1.25 inches, if you had a pin 1.25 inches from the edge, that's not good.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I know Troy didn't ask for it, but let's now do a really super critical
Oh, man.
evaluation
No.
of this tote that he made.
It's a very nice tote. I like it.
Let me see. It is nice. Yeah, nice dovetails. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Oh, look at those wedged mortises there. Mm-hmm. Very nice. Through mortises.
Technically,
clean.
Prepare for snark.
those wedges are in line with the grain on the side.
And
And if you
that's
drove
not-
this in,
yeah.
you could technically split that side. So a general rule of thumb for wedges is to orient the wedges across the grain so that you're compressing in-grain fibers as opposed to potentially splitting long grain fibers.
However, if
But
he
they
had-
look cool.
Yes. In this case, aesthetically, they're more pleasing this way than if you were to turn them 90 degrees.
I agree.
Yeah. And they're so far inset from the edge, probably not going to split.
And the other thing is if the
It's
mortise was a
hard
little bit longer than the tenon, it sort of wedges those things to fill the gaps on the ends of the joint. So
Let me take a look at this photograph here.
Again, this is Riveting Podcast. We're just totally...
Troy, I'm disgusted by the design of that tool tote.
I think this is the worst
totally
podcast
kidding.
ever. I'm pretty sure it is.
Well, we're going to lose a few subscribers
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah.
So let's move on to the next question. It comes from Tuck, who writes, how much are you concerned with, or how close do you get to perfect? So this opens up an entire philosophical debate. That could take
I
hours.
spend 2 hours every morning before work
Quaffing,
trying on different outfits. Yes, exfoliating,
exfoliating.
shaving.
Well, clearly, me with my union suit, I know, you know that I'm checking out different outfits.
But maybe he doesn't mean us personally.
So how much are you concerned with perfection? So I sense that this fellow Tuck probably belabors things a bit. I'm guessing if you're asking that question, you're probably that guy who's in your shop going, who cuts something ever so slightly off, and it's like, oh, you idiot, and you're beating yourself over the head,
Before we get too
which
far
I do routinely.
into this philosophical conversation, I will
Yeah.
say I'll tell Tuck one thing, which is I always tell my students. You focus on the one or two things you did poorly, and you fail to focus on the 20 or 30 things you did
Your
correctly.
advice is to focus on the things you do poorly?
No.
Oh.
What I say is, so student,
Okay.
grasshopper,
Yes.
you are focusing on the one or two things that you did poorly.
This is
You are
often true.
failing to notice the 10 to 20, 30 things you did wonderfully.
Correctly.
So stop focusing on those one to two things and look at the things you did well.
Yeah, I mean, okay, sort of along Matt's lines. By its nature, woodworking is a subtractive process. We're starting with a log into boards, into thinner boards, smaller boards, into joinery, so they all fit together. So at every step of the process, there's an opportunity to sort of miscut what you're doing. In essence, any piece of furniture is an accumulation of errors. Yeah, do we try to minimize those errors? Absolutely. My philosophy is I strive for perfect, but then I plan for not perfect, and I try to I plan my imperfections in as a consistent way as possible. For instance, if I'm making a door frame with mortises and tenons and grooves, I'll try to center the mortise and tenons and grooves in all those parts, and I'll do it by milling all my parts as consistent as possible. I'll do my machine setups as perfectly centered as I can, and then I'm going to trust that I didn't quite nail it, and I'm going to mark all my reference surfaces for all my parts so they're all against the fence or the tabletop. So if there are any slight offsets, they're consistently offset, so that, let's say I didn't quite nail my mortise and tenons, and I end up with rails which are slightly proud of my stiles.
Mm-hmm.
The operative thing here is both rails are slightly proud of both rails the same amount on each end, and you don't end up with this stair-step offset where on one side the rail's proud, on the other side the stile's proud, and so on. You start planing this
Dog
thing down,
chasing its tail.
and you never get to flat. So
Yeah, I mean, there's the way I always go about it is I know there are places where imprecision is not acceptable, and there are places where it is acceptable. Joinery, for example, imprecision is not a good thing. So
it depends.
Depends on what you're making. Like on my little boxes that I make, imprecision in the miter joints is not good. It leads to disaster.
Right.
So I really have worked to figure out how to get perfect miters. And by the way, I've done it. But so I really work to kill the miters and get them perfect.
Yeah.
That's important. However, when I'm putting a pull on the lid of a box, if it's a little bit off center, that's fine. That's okay with me. If it, as long as it's not too far off center, just a tiny little bit is fine. So I think about it woodworking that way. There are things that I know that have to be perfect, that you want to get perfect. Like if you're making a wall cabinet that's going to have a door, you want that cabinet case to be perfectly square. So the opening for the door is perfectly square.
Right.
Because that'll make making the door a hell of a lot easier. The same goes with drawer pockets.
Yep. Also, the strategies of plan, like you said, plan where you need to be perfect and be aware of those surfaces. Like, for instance, when I cut dovetails, I always cut the dovetails and chop the dovetails with the show face, the outside corner toward me. So if I'm sawing a dovetail, I'll make sure I hit the line on the outside. If I overshoot the line on the inside, who cares? I'll undercut the shoulder, the baseline when I'm chopping to create a shallow V undercut, as long as I'm really clean on the outside surface. The undercut on the inside, make sure everything comes together. If I'm cross-cutting case parts, I'll have the front edge of the case part against the crosscut sled and flip it so that the reference face is always against the sled, so that the fence of the sled, so that if I'm slightly off square, all those parts for both sides are going to be consistently off square, and I'll end up with corners that come together instead of all wacky.
Right.
So,
There's also that old adage that what separates a really good woodworker from a mediocre one is the ability to fix your mistakes. Meaning,
yes.
Yeah.
be prepared for the fact that you're always going to make a mistake here and there. It's going to happen, and it's okay.
Yeah. But there also, if you make a big mistake, a good woodworker doesn't fix it. He throws it out.
Right.
Yeah.
And you start over. Because some mistakes you can't fix.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then finally, the definition of perfect. I mean, not that there's a whole lot of factory-made solid wood furniture around anymore, but sort of back in the day, the notion was that a piece of Ethan Allen furniture was perfect, something that came from a factory machine made, and then the notion that we're trying to make something by hand to match that consistency was sort of not a good path to go down. So the notion of, what is your definition of perfect? This is something you're making by hand. There's such a thing as the mark of the maker. There's tool marks, there's scribe lines from Dovetails, there's plane marks, there's, the thing there is, on one hand, a little plane scallop is fine. On the other hand, machine marks left from a joiner and planer are not fine. So
Yeah, and also, I mean, in comparison to, like, if Ethan Allen's the standard of perfect, which I'm not sure that it is, but if it is, there's places where certainly manufacturing furniture, there's an advantage over the individual maker. In terms of consistency,
Yep.
the ability to mill joinery precisely, etc. But there are places where manufactured furniture absolutely falls down in comparison to custom-made furniture. For example, it's not uncommon to see a drawer front that's glued up out of 3 small, ugly pieces of wood
or a
that don't-
tabletop.
Yes.
or a tabletop.
Yeah.
And so that's where you can flex your advantage in grain selection, wood selection,
Yes.
things like that. And even though you might not have as precise as joinery, and you might be a little out of square, your piece is going to look tons better because of the wood selection, the grain selection, and things like that.
So that's one of the things that bothers me about the bedroom set my wife and I have. We inherited from my uncle, and it's a really nice, well-built cherry set that I could never afford normally. It was very expensive. But what kills me about
Ed's
it
uncle was Duncan Fife.
is he was.
Good old Uncle Duncan.
He was in a sadly he was in a retirement community in Secaucus, New Jersey, until just recently when he passed. But anyhow, but what kills me about this is the fact that it's all cherry, right? But it's been stained like considerably dark, and the reason they did that was for just the reason that you pointed out. If you look at the top of like the the 2 nightstands or the tops of the chests, the bureaus, it's clear that they're composed of several strips of thinner wood instead of maybe 2 pieces of wood that have been edge glued.
Yeah.
And they hide all these many
Yeah.
pieces that they're by putting a dark
Right.
stain on. It's like, God, it's all beautiful cherry. Like, why are you doing that?
Cherry
and it still
wood.
looks good. It's a
Yeah.
pretty
Yeah.
it's a pretty set, but it would be prettier if it were just cherry.
Yeah.
You know?
I would kind of follow up on something Mike said, just to the importance of understanding how you make furniture and how you cut joinery and what you need to do to ensure that that joinery turns out well. So, for example, when I make a wall cabinet and I'm going to cut dados for a shelf or a divider, right? Now, I know that when I go back, I want that dado to be precisely like, say, 3/16 of an inch deep, because it's easier to cut a rabbet to fit into a 3/16 inch groove and have that be tight against the inside of the wall of the cabinet if it's something like 3/16, and if it's some wacky number that's not, that. So when I go to cut that dado, before I cut that dado, I hand plane the inside surface of the case and do everything that I was going to do before I apply a finish.
Right.
So that after I cut it, I don't go and remove wood that would mess up the depth of the dado.
Right.
So that's another way that what you have to figure out is what you can do to get to perfection.
Yep.
And then worrying about perfections, you stop worrying about perfection because you've already built into your techniques what it takes to make something as close to perfect as it can get.
Yes, and I think a misconception by folks struggling to improve their craft is that if something is imperfect, it's because they didn't try hard enough. Like they weren't skilled enough, or I'll try harder next time, because it's like really most imperfections are sort of almost guaranteed by the processes that you're using, and by having smarter strategies and building and understanding where these imperfections come from and head them off before they happen, you'll sort of, get to perfect or closer to perfect a lot easier and more predictably over time.
Yes.
All right. I say we head into our next segment of the day, and that's going to be Smooth Moves, where we cop to our most boneheaded, moronic moves in the workshop.
I find all mine by reading Ed's diary.
Well, I don't have any smooth moves this week, not because I'm so perfect, but because I've just been so busy these last months working on my house that I haven't done much in the furniture making arena. Although I'm getting to the point where I have to start building I have to build a sort of a platform for a platform bed, and for this little detached apartment we have on our property. I was thinking I'm going to do essentially a big dovetailed box with proud dovetails, and just make a box and then put a bed into it.
This is something you're going to rent to people, right?
We're going to rent it for like 2 years until we recoup our investment on what it cost us to redo it all.
Yeah.
And so that's part of the rationale of just doing something simple. So if it gets messed up. It's not like I spent
Yeah,
weeks and
just
weeks
a
doing
small bit
this.
of advice: don't even waste your time doing dovetails. Because, like
but
Troy
I
mentioned,
like
no one,
doing it, though.
none of the people that
Oh, I know. I'm not doing it for them. I'm doing that for me. I just
and
enjoy
when they're
doing it.
cooking crystal meth in there, you don't want some nice.
They will be
bed-
cooking crystal meth. There's a lot of windows in there, and I'm going to know exactly what's going on.
It's got his binoculars, it's in his
That's
camcorder.
right. I'm going to be like, who was it in Bewitched, Mrs. Kravitz? That was always with the binoculars
yes.
in the front window. Harold, look at what they're doing. That crazy woman across the street.
Settle down, Gladys.
Settle down. So we're... God, what an esoteric. Anyhow.
Smooth moves.
Yeah, is that what we're doing?
Yeah, smooth moves.
Okay,
Shut
smooth
up now,
moves. You go first.
Ed. Me?
Yeah, you're up, man.
All right.
Tell us what you messed up.
All right. So, related to this little triangle that I have with the super smooth end grain, it's like a baby angel's bottom. I think that'll get us in trouble with the FCC, actually.
Yeah, if
Matthew,
not, it
give that to
should.
me. You can have this at the end of the day after class.
All right. I'm making a wooden smoother because I want
Little Krenov style plane.
a little Krenov style plane with a 1.5-inch blade because I want a really small smoother for the boxes that I make. Because some of the boxes I make are like 5 inches long and 1 3/4 inches wide.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
so
okay. I get
really
it.
small. And as much as I love my number 4, it's just too big, especially like on an 1.5-inch long piece of wood. So I want to have a little tiny smoother. So I started to make it recently.
And then you discovered your block plane is an awesome little tiny smoother.
Yes, and I'm like,
And that's your smooth move.
no.
Okay.
But actually, I did start to think maybe I should just get a standard angle block plane.
Stanley number 1.
Lee Nielsen number 9.5, I think is what it is. But and I would have bevel up. I could put whatever angle I wanted to on it, and it would make a good smoother. But anyways, continuing because I already have this, nice hawk blade for
Right.
Ace. So I'm making it, and you have to come to the point where you drill the holes for the cross pins. So I'm following along with the book by David Fink.
Yes.
Is that his name? Right, Fink. And he wrote an article for us based on his book. Fantastic book.
Yep.
And I did not read I was reading along, and I did not read carefully enough. So I ended up drilling the holes for the cross pin in the wrong place, and so I dry fit the. I made the cross pin. I put it in the holes. I dry fit the what am I making again?
Body
the
and
plane,
sides
the body of the
together,
plane
right.
together, and I'm like, that's not enough room for the plane blade and ship breaker, and so even the plane blade and ship breaker wouldn't fit underneath the cross pin, so I had to plug it and re-drill the holes. But the good news, this is just
You could save it.
yeah,
That's good.
I saved it, and it's just a prototype, anyways. Once I figure out once I make it once, and then also figure out the size and shape that I want, I'll go back and remake it out of cherry and hokoboro.
Kokoboro.
Hokoboro.
Kokoboro.
My
See,
favorite wood.
I love saying that. It just rolls off the tongue so nicely.
Yes.
So wait, what are the cross pins going to be? Are they like brass pin stock, rod stock?
Well, the cross pin right now is cherry.
Oh, it's all wood.
Yeah,
Okay.
you start out with a square piece of wood,
Yeah.
and then you make round tenons on the end of it,
Mhm.
and those fit into the cross pin holes.
Got it.
But I'm thinking it's like, okay, that works, but one of two things. I'm going to have to make it differently because either I'm going to maybe drill the hole, but I actually might just take that sucker down to the shop and use the mortising machine and just make square mortises. I don't see why I can't do that.
Well, I think
You want some
it
rotational
needs
play
to
there.
rotate. So because it's the blade and ship breaker aren't perfectly
Right.
parallel, you want a really flat mating surface between that little
Yeah.
rotating pin and that blade.
Idiot, man.
Well, hey, I could always try it and see if it works. I make things perfect, so for me, it's not.
But
a
to Ed's
problem.
point, I think if you could just drill a round hole and put in some brass rod, that kind of does the same thing.
You can do that, yes, and I might do that because making the little cross.
Yeah, they
pin
look
is a
pretty.
pain
That
in
would
the
look
butt.
pretty, like the end of the brass rod sticking through the cherry.
It looked pretty.
It'll look pretty.
got a pretty
Let's not
cross
go.
rod.
Let's not go there. No. Now let's make fun of Mike and his smooth move.
This
Yeah.
is sort of a.
Please be epic. Please be epic.
This is a day-long smooth move.
Ooh,
Awesome.
that's gonna be painful.
Was
So
it that? Is that shirt, Mike?
The one that you wear every day, that you have in like 8 different colors, the same Carhartt shirt. I would like to point this out. Mike has the same. He has a drawer full of Carhartt T-shirts that are of varying colors, that he switches throughout the week in the summertime. We're wearing this week. We're wearing a sort of a wine colored,
plum maybe.
Burgundy.
plum,
Burgundy.
burgundy. Earlier in the week, we had
Bordeaux.
a navy blue.
Yes.
Right. What other selections do you have in your wardrobe? I'm sure everybody's finding this riveting.
Green maybe.
Got a little forest green action going on.
Yep.
I have a tan color, which my wife says does not complement my complexion, so I tend
Tan
to
shirts are
not
tough.
wear them.
Yeah, I don't like tan
Yeah.
shirts.
You
All
know.
right. Anyhow,
I will say, if you're gonna wear a T-shirt every day,
yeah.
Carhartt's the way to go.
I just gave a talk to the Maine Woodworkers Association, and my wife said, "Are you going to dress for it?" I said, "Yep." I got me a brand new Carhartt T-shirt.
No, you don't want brand new. You want it to look like
No, this is-
worked in and lived in.
I look sharp,
All
very
right.
sharp.
So smooth move.
So I was teaching this jewelry box class, and I was making a little box along with the class. So I spent a day doing these little dovetails, endless dovetails on all these 10 little drawers. And I was using one of the student workbenches because I like to demonstrate at a student workbench so we're all sort of on a level playing field.
Such an egalitarian.
Meanwhile, over in the corner, Bob Van Dyke's workbench, the instructor workbench, is this gorgeous kind of Lee Nielsen style workbench with a twin screw vise. But
Gold-plated.
The really nice thing about his workbench is he has about 17 4-foot long, 10 bulb fixture, light fixtures hanging maybe like 5 feet above his bench. It looks like an operating table. There's so much light just pouring down there. Obviously, he, over the other student workbenches, there's these, 2 bulb fixtures hanging about 20 feet up in the air. So I basically spent an entire day dovetailing. Number one, at a workbench with not a lot of light, and number two, I didn't have my heavy duty reading glasses. I had my standard 1.75s. I did not have my 2.50s with me. So
That is one of the most saddest things I've ever heard a
hey,
person
trust
say.
me, you
My
know,
heavy duty reading
It's up,
glasses.
trust me, you'll be there, and you'll
Oh.
thank me for this.
Paul Pekovich.
So I'm dovetailing as careful as I can, and man, everything is just not coming out great. I'm just killing myself. It's like, Mike, you forgot how to dovetail.
How embarrassing.
You were
This
using
is-
green tape instead of blue tape.
I have a blue tape.
Oh, you had your blue tape.
Here's another thing. This awesome alignment guide, I only had 7, 1 for each student, so I was not using my alignment guide. I'm going to blame it on that as well. Anyway, I just had a tough day dovetailing, pretty demoralizing. The next day I went back to Bob's bench with all the light, had my high-powered readers going on. I was back to nailing it. I was just
Two-cycle, full
nailing
start
it. So,
readers.
dovetails, plenty of light, and swallow your pride. Get a pair of reading glasses. If you're close to 40 or over, and even if you insist you have perfect eyesight, more power to you. Go buy some reading glasses at the drugstore when you cut your dovetails.
What I don't understand is, Mike, and maybe there's got to be some really awesome Pekovich reasoning behind this.
What?
Why do you have 2 different powers of reading glasses? Either you need the 2.5s or you don't.
No, that's not true. Because the 175s, I kind of keep them on all the time. Obviously, they're on my head whenever they're not on my nose. And I could see probably, 4 or 5 feet away with these pretty well, all the way up to reading. But then when it comes to really, really close, 2.5s, bam, that's like a magnifying
Fascinating.
glass. But wearing those during the day, it's like walking around looking through a magnifying glass. Everything beyond 12 inches is blurry and it makes me nauseous. So yeah, I just have the special purpose guys.
No, I thought the ones that you wore, you have right on
Wait,
top
so
of your
your
head
smooth
right
move
now.
was
Yes.
Yeah.
You only wear those for effect. That when someone
Yeah.
comes to see you in your
Yeah, you could
office,
do
you put them down on your nose and you're like,
Mike also does that thing where
unacceptable.
where he looks up at you like.
Yes, yes.
Huh?
Well, see, I wear bifocals.
Okay.
Maybe
Speaking of peepaw,
that's right. I've been wearing
nice.
my first set of bifocals was actually shop glasses, safety glasses, and they made a huge difference for me.
Yeah.
But maybe I need to check into this. Just get a magnifier. I wonder if I can wear reading glasses over my prescription glasses.
I don't know.
So, So your dovetails were lacking in
My dovetails
accuracy.
were lacking.
They were horrible.
Yes,
Well,
all
that's a little embarrassing, Mike.
due
for
to
you.
very easily remedied circumstances.
People all over the internet were talking about how poor his dovetails were.
That's
Yeah.
right. This is going to go viral. This is
All
going to be trending
on the
CNN.
On the
He's
YouTube.
on the YouTube.
In the forums.
All right, let's head into our next question. It comes from Stuart, who wrote, I have a single-stage Harbor Freight dust collector, and I work in a dedicated one-car garage. I've decided to run some permanent ductwork as I'm tired of dragging an expandable hose from tool to tool. Also, the modest performance of the dust collector is compromised to the point that frequently I don't even bother. The dust collector has a 5-inch intake. One day I'll definitely upgrade to a more powerful model, but I don't want to have to redo the ductwork. I also want to do everything possible to maximize its performance with respect to the ductwork. How many times can you say ductwork?
Ductwork.
My question, should I run 5-inch
Ductwork.
or 6-inch?
Ductwork.
Will going bigger than the intake help the performance? If it will not, I'm planning on running 6, as I know many of the larger model collectors have 6-inch intakes. So he's talking about what's going to happen potentially if he has 6-inch duct and a 5-inch intake on his dust collector.
Let me explain something to you. It's like putting a restrictor plate on your stock car. No clue. We're going to answer this question two ways.
Yes. So let me go first. I'll do the duct work, and then Matt, you can throw your sage advice out there. General rule of thumb is for duct work is go as large a diameter as possible for as long as possible. So 6-inch, good. Go 6-inch as far as you can to the machine, and then if you have to step it down right at the machine. 6 to 5 is no big deal. You can also retrofit the little dust port on your machine to go wider, but it seems like a lot of folks run 6-inch. A lot of times they'll have like little 4-inch drops to a machine. If you can stay 6-inch, that's fine. The only time you might step down your runs is in a really, really big shop. I think there are some efficiencies in really long duct runs where you do want to step it down from 6 to something smaller over a certain length. But in a small shop, and especially your situation, that's a non-issue.
Yeah, and in his case, what he should do is get a 5 to 6 reducer, or 6 to 5 reducer, put that on his dust collector, and then run 6 straight from there, right? That's what you're saying. Because that's what he's asking, is that his dust collector has a 5-inch port.
Oh, I see. So why go bigger than that? Yeah, I don't know about that. But the bigger issue is the fact that you got a little portable dust collector.
Yes, that is my contribution here.
The premise being it's not meant to suck through
you're
big,
not-
long runs.
I doubt that if you set up several runs and you have this thing in the corner, that it's going to be effective at all.
Yeah.
That they're just not made to be used like that. That's why they have wheels on them, because you're supposed to take them to the machine and have a short run.
Yes.
And that's how that's going to be most effective.
Right.
Yes.
You need to go back in time. Do you remember that sitcom Home Improvement?
Yes.
You need to attach like a gasoline engine to that dust collector, see if you can amp it up a little bit.
Right. He needs to get like
Make a big mess.
a 6-foot exhaust fan,
Nice.
put it in the wall of his shop, and get like a giant, like a 3-foot diameter run of duct work.
Awesome.
Well, I'm sort of in the same position here in that I have I don't know if it's a 1.5 horse or 2 horse jet dust collector with that little canister. Not big enough to run to every single machine. I don't want to move it around. So my machines are situated as such that I have that collector parked right between my planer and my table saw. And it's hooked up with maybe 4-foot length flexible hose directly to those machines. That's it.
Yeah.
It is hooked up all the time to all 3 machines?
Just 2.
Or just 2? Okay,
Yeah,
and then you're moving between joiner and planer.
I'm not. My joiner, those chips go in a box.
Oh, right.
Those are chips, not dust. No big deal. For the bandsaw, I have basically a dedicated shop vac hooked up to my bandsaw. I got a dedicated shop vac hooked up to my chop saw, which I can then move to a sander or a portable random order sander if I need it. But basically, until you got like a big enough cyclone to service the entire shop, I just kind of divide and conquer.
You don't
collect
have a
dust where I
split.
need it. I do have a split for my collector. One split goes to the planer, the other goes to the table saw.
It does,
Yeah.
okay.
And little gates to open and close, because that's something that small is not You can't
Yeah.
keep 2 gates open all the time to
Right.
collect the chips that you want to.
Yeah, I have a portable one like that too. I have a jet.
The
what is it?
Vortex.
The Vortex. Yeah, and I basically my joiner and planer are close to each other, and I can hook those both up at the same time. But when I use my bandsaw, I got to roll it over to the bandsaw, and I do have a port on my. I put a port on my old unisaw, and so I got to roll it. If I want to hook it up to that, I got to roll it over there. Yeah, it's just what you got to do.
Actually, the collector I have in my bandsaw, I thought it was like a really cool idea because in the woodworking catalogs, it looks like a mini dust collector. It looks like a like a small
Yeah.
metal trash can thing with a big motor on top and this big 4-inch port for a hose going on. I thought, oh, that looks really cool. That's like perfect. And our shop person here, Bill Peck, he tested it and he said, it just doesn't like work at all. And I thought, no, he's got to be wrong because it looks so cool. This has got to work. And so I got it, actually bought it, and put it next to my bandsaw. And I have maybe a 2-foot run of hose going directly to the bandsaw. It's loud as all get out, but if you put your hand over the hose, you can just imagine a little bit
Really?
of suction, a little bit of vacuum from this thing.
Bizarre.
So that would be my tool bomb if we were doing a tool bomb.
All right.
You didn't listen to Bill Peck.
I did not, and that's my other smooth move. First of all, is not listen to Bill.
Yeah.
Always listen to Bill.
We got one more question for this week. It's from Craig, who writes, I have a problem with a broken screw in one of my kitchen cabinets. Apparently, he recently had to do some retrofitting of some uppers over a refrigerator, and in the process, I removed the doors. While reattaching the doors, I broke off 3 screws. 2 were above the stile, and I could remove them with pliers. The third one is broken just below the surface. The hinges are the full overlay type. I have a set of the screw extractor bits, but the screw is too small to drill a hole for the extractor, even with the smallest one. How do I get them out without having an obvious repair visible? This is an easy one, apparently, to answer.
Yeah, use a different extractor. The extractors you probably have are sort of these stepped cone-shaped things, which you drill a hole in the screw, and this thing somehow threads into the hole. Maybe it's good for big stuff, but for small stuff, like you mentioned, it's impossible. The only screw extractor I've used that I really like is, we think it's, we neglected to look it up before the podcast. We think it's called the Unscrew-em screw extractor.
It's the unscrew 'em.
Okay.
Yeah.
And this is, it's a split pin with a sort of sawtooth end, and it basically expands over the broken shaft of the screw, and then the little teethy guys cut into it until they lock in place, and they begin extracting it. You chuck it in your drill, and you turn your drill on backwards, and it threads this thing in until it grabs, and then it threads the screw out. It is awesomely fantastic how well it works. So try that.
Again, we're not addressing the real problem here.
How did
If
you break
we-
the screw?
if we're
How did
breaking
you
through
break through screws?
Yes, let's talk about this.
How did that happen? I don't know how it happened.
I don't know.
But you got to be more careful putting the screws back
Maybe
in.
they're old screws. They were going back in the same holes.
I
They're
guess.
sort of
Well, they
worn
were
out a little
probably
bit.
cheapy deepy screws that came with factory-built cabinets. Who knows?
Bought a brand new impact driver. And
Yeah, you should not be doing hinge screws with an impact driver if that's what you were doing.
Hammer drill.
And you should not be trying to quote unquote clock your screws either, because that'll just lead to broken screw heads.
So you settle for less than perfect when it comes to your screw installation.
Pins versus tails.
I do not clock my screws either. For me, the perfect setting for the perfect orientation of the slot in a screw is whenever the screw is perfectly tightened.
Yes.
Then that's the perfect orientation of the slot.
Yep. And then you just leave it.
And that disappoints so many students.
Yes.
They're like, "Oh, really? You don't clock your screws?" It's like, no. It's like, oh.
Some of us are more obsessive compulsive than others, unfortunately. All right.
Those are the students you just don't help anymore. You just ignore them the rest of the class.
What Tim Rousseau would refer to as broken. All right, guys. We get lots of comments on our page in the iTunes store as well as through email. Every week I like to read 1, 2, or 3. So here we go. We've got one today from DK Byrne 2, who writes, great podcast, lots of information with some fun, snarky, sarcastic banter to keep it entertaining. Oh, no. No,
yeah.
Mr. Byrne.
Yeah,
No,
what's up with this?
No. Second only to some undisclosed other podcast
I
in the
know.
woodworking vein.
What's up with that?
I don't know what to tell you. sir.
I've heard that podcast.
Please. Actually, no, they're buddies of ours. He says, second only to Wood Talk for woodworking podcasts. We just gave you guys some free love, so you better return the favor.
I think everybody just saw my eye roll on the video.
That's right. Yeah.
Oh, this is going to burn up online, man. This is going to be a flame war, man.
That's some thin ice we're walking on there. That's what we have going for
I
us.
would like
Yeah.
to distance myself from
Yes.
these controversial
I
topics.
would like to distance myself from that.
Let me just,
comment.
I'm going to sit closer to Mike
Hey.
over here. We'll leave you over there, and I'll read
The
my
problem is
outro.
I'm going to get flack for that, not Matt. So
No, you're
that's
not.
not
That's
fair.
exactly how I designed
It's
it.
all Matt Kenny. If you have questions or comments, you can write to Matt at 123 Main Street, Anytown, USA. That bit of controversy about wraps it up this week for Shop Talk Live. Thanks to our sponsor this week, Minwax. We'll be back again in 2 weeks on July 3rd, 2015 for our next episode. In the meantime, show us a little love or potentially hate this week by leaving a comment on iTunes, and by all means, click that 5-star rating. Don't forget to send your questions and comments into shoptalk@taunton.com, TAUNTON.com. You can catch the podcast via iTunes, stream it on your computer at shoptalklive.com, or catch us on iHeartRadio. Cheers, everybody.